Hello, I am Apple from the Apple Story channel, and today I am taking you into a world you think you know, but I promise you, by the time you finish listening, you will question what you thought was possible. Let's talk about power plants, factories, and industrial giants, the hidden machines of our civilization. And no, this is not about generic textbook definitions. I am going to give you real, verifiable facts that sound almost impossible. Did you know there's a power plant in Japan that literally uses snow as fuel? In the city of Aomori, where snow piles up for months, engineers built a system that stores massive mountains of snow in insulated chambers. In the summer, that stored snow is used to cool water, which reduces the energy needed for air conditioning in nearby facilities. In other words, winter is powering summer and it works. Or take the world's largest power plant, the Three Gorges Dam in China. It's so massive that it actually slowed down the Earth's rotation by a fraction of a microsecond when its reservoir filled up. The sheer weight of the water, over 39 trillion kilograms, shifted the planet's moment of inertia. You cannot feel it, but scientifically, the day got slightly longer because of a single man-made structure. And then there's a factory in the Netherlands where the production process is so automated that the entire plant can run in total darkness. Why? Because the robots that assemble machinery don't need light to work. It's called a lights-out factory, and the only humans you'll find there are maintenance crews who show up from time to service the machines. Here's one that will make you look at power plants differently forever. In Finland, there's a nuclear power plant that uses its excess heat to warm a greenhouse. The greenhouse produces bananas. Yes, tropical bananas, in Finland. 500 kilometers from the Arctic Circle. It's not a tourist stunt, they actually sell the bananas locally. And if you think that's strange, consider this: in Iceland, there is a geothermal power station that is literally turning carbon dioxide into rock. They pump CO2 deep underground into basalt rock formations, and in just 2 years, it mineralizes into solid stone. This is not experimental science fiction, it's happening right now, and it could be one of the most promising ways to fight climate change. But my personal favorite, a coal-fired power plant in Denmark that was redesigned to double as a ski slope. They built an artificial mountain on top of the plant, complete with ski lifts and hiking trails. Imagine snowboarding down a power plant chimney, and yes, people actually do it. And before you think power plants are only about energy, let me tell you about one of the strangest industrial factories in the world. In Japan, there's a small facility where everything, from packaging to final shipment, is handled by a single fruit. That fruit is me, an apple. Well, not me exactly, but apples like me. The factory is so advanced it can inspect, sort, polish, and package apples without human hands ever touching them. In Norway, there's a data center built entirely inside a mountain. It's carved into an old NATO ammunition storage facility, surrounded by solid rock for natural protection. The cold mountain air helps keep the servers from overheating, which means they use far less energy for cooling. Essentially, the mountain itself is part of the technology. In Australia, there's a factory that can turn old plastic waste into fuel in less than an hour. They use a process called thermal depolymerization, which breaks the plastic down at high temperatures without oxygen. The result? Diesel fuel, crude oil, and even gas that can be used immediately. It's like reversing the clock on plastic, taking something we thought was trash and turning it back into the resource it came from. And here's a fact that sounds like a scene from a spy movie. In Sweden, there's a power plant that literally burns trash from other countries to make electricity. Nations like the UK and Norway pay Sweden to take their waste, and Sweden then incinerates it in ultra-clean facilities to produce heat and power. It's so efficient that less than 1% of Sweden's household waste ends up in landfills. Then there's an oil refinery in Texas that has a flare stack so tall and bright, pilots have used it as an unofficial navigation point at night. The flame, which burns off excess gases, can be seen from over 50 kilometers away on a clear evening. And perhaps one of the strangest, a cement factory in South Korea that's partially powered by waste coffee grounds. The oils and biomass in the coffee produce energy when burned, reducing the need for coal. So yes, your morning latte could be keeping someone's lights on indirectly. Speaking of coffee, in London there's a bus fleet partially powered by biofuel made from coffee waste. They collect the leftover grounds from cafes across the city, process them, and blend the oil into diesel. Every cup of coffee sipped in London might be helping a bus drive a little further. Here's one for the record books. In Belgium, there's a chocolate factory with its own power plant fueled entirely by cocoa shells, a byproduct of chocolate making. They burn the shells to create steam, which drives turbines and powers the factory. The air smells faintly of chocolate around the facility, and yes, workers say it's both delightful and torturous. And then there's a factory in Switzerland where the machinery is so precise it can cut metal within 2 microns of accuracy, that's smaller than a red blood cell. This isn't for jewelry or watches, it's for parts used in satellites and medical devices, where even the tiniest error could mean mission failure. In Russia, there's a power plant so cold in winter that workers have to heat the oil in the machinery before they can even start it. Located in Siberia, the temperature can drop below -50 degrees Celsius, and if the oil freezes, it becomes as solid as butter. They literally use industrial heaters just to make the machines wake up. In South Africa, the world's deepest gold mine, Mponeng, is more than 4 kilometers below the surface. Down there, the rock temperature can reach 60 degrees Celsius, and they have to pump ice-cold water from the surface to keep it survivable for the miners. If the cooling systems ever failed, it would become lethally hot in minutes. Then there's the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, the site of the 1986 disaster. Parts of the facility remain so radioactive today that robotic machines and drones, not humans, are used for inspection. Even short visits by scientists require full protective gear and strict time limits. Despite the danger, the plant's control rooms and abandoned machinery are still frozen in time, like a snapshot of the exact moment it was evacuated. In the middle of the Nevada desert, there's a solar power plant that uses thousands of mirrors to focus sunlight onto a central tower. It's so powerful that birds flying through the concentrated beam can be incinerated in seconds. Pilots call this area the streamer zone because of the trails of smoke left in the air. In Japan, there's a chemical factory built on the edge of a cliff, surrounded by the ocean. It's designed that way so if there's a leak or explosion, toxic materials will fall directly into the sea instead of drifting toward populated areas. It sounds extreme, but in some industries, geography is part of the safety system. In Canada, there's an oil sands operation so large it's visible from space, covering more ground than the city of New York. The machinery there includes dump trucks taller than 2-story houses and shovels big enough to scoop up a family car in one bite. And perhaps one of the most bizarre, in Germany, there's a steel factory where the molten metal is so hot that workers' protective suits are made with actual silver thread. Why silver? Because it reflects heat better than almost any other material on Earth. Without it, even standing near the furnaces would be deadly. In the United States, there's a facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that was once so classified during World War II that workers had no idea they were helping build the first atomic bomb. Thousands of people operated equipment, monitored dials, and handled materials, believing they were helping the war effort, but the real purpose was hidden behind layers of compartmentalization. Only after the war ended did they find out they had been part of the Manhattan Project. In Switzerland, there's a watchmaking workshop for luxury brands where photography is completely banned, even for employees. Every worker has to pass through metal detectors and fingerprint scanners when leaving to ensure no component, not even a single watch hand, leaves the building without authorization. In the Nevada desert, near Area 51, there's a manufacturing site where experimental aircraft parts are built and tested. The secrecy is so intense that suppliers delivering materials are sometimes blindfolded when entering the premises, to prevent them from knowing the exact location of their delivery inside the facility. In the United Kingdom, the Royal Mint has a section so secure that the walls are reinforced with concrete and steel, and every gram of gold is weighed multiple times a day. Even microscopic gold dust on a worker's clothing must be recovered before they can leave. They use vacuum chambers to suck up particles from overalls, boots, and gloves. In China, there's a smartphone assembly plant where new models are developed in black rooms, windowless, soundproof spaces accessible only to a handful of engineers with multiple layers of biometric security. Employees working in these rooms sometimes use code names instead of their real names to protect their identities. And then there's the Boeing Everett factory in Washington state, the largest building by volume in the world. While not top secret, some areas inside are off limits even to employees without special clearance. Massive curtains, the size of small skyscrapers, separate sections where new aircraft prototypes are assembled so that rival companies or unauthorized staff can't see them. But perhaps one of the most tightly controlled factories of all is in Kentucky, USA, the Jim Beam Bourbon Distillery's secret warehouse where decades-old whiskey is stored. The location is not marked on any public map, guarded 24/7, and only a few master distillers know exactly which barrels are aging there. The value? Potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in rare spirits. Alright, let's walk straight into the future real factories that feel like they were pulled out of a sci-fi movie, yet they're running right now on our planet. In Germany, there's a car factory where vehicles move through the assembly line not on conveyor belts, but on automated pods that hover slightly above the floor using magnetic levitation. The system is so quiet that you can have a conversation at normal volume while cars glide past you like they're floating. In Singapore, there's a vertical farm factory inside a warehouse that grows vegetables on rotating towers up to 9 meters tall. The towers slowly spin so every plant gets equal sunlight from LED panels. The yield is so high that the factory produces over 1 ton of fresh greens per day from an area smaller than a tennis court. In Japan, there's a robot hotel, and yes, it's technically a hospitality factory where every role from reception to cleaning is handled by robots, including a dinosaur-shaped receptionist that can check you in and print your room key. Behind the scenes, an entire automated laundry and room supply facility runs without a single human present. In Sweden, there's a timber factory where giant 3D printers build entire houses out of wood. The printers can construct the walls of a small home in less than 24 hours, ready for windows, insulation, and electrical wiring. The designs are uploaded digitally, and the printers carve out every hole and slot with millimeter precision. In the United Arab Emirates, there's a water bottling plant that literally makes water out of thin air. It uses atmospheric water generation, pulling humidity from the desert air, condensing it, filtering it, and bottling it all inside the same building. The idea is to reduce dependence on imported bottled water and groundwater pumping. In the Netherlands, there's a greenhouse complex so large it can be seen from space, and it glows bright pink at night because of special LED lights tuned to maximize plant growth. Inside, AI-controlled systems adjust temperature, humidity, and even the amount of carbon dioxide in the air to boost yields. And then there's the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada, which is not just a battery plant, it's designed to eventually run entirely on renewable energy, with solar panels covering its roof and wind turbines nearby. The goal is to produce more energy than it consumes, making it a net positive factory. Perhaps the most surreal of all, in Denmark, there's an artificial intelligence-controlled recycling plant where cameras and robotic arms identify and sort waste at a speed no human could match. The AI can distinguish between different types of plastic, metal, and paper in milliseconds, even if they're dirty or broken. Alright, let's dive into the industrial oddities, real factories so bizarre that if you didn't see them with your own eyes, you might think they were a prank. In France, there's a cheese factory built directly above a series of underground caves. These caves have the perfect natural humidity and temperature for aging Roquefort cheese, so instead of building storage rooms, they simply use the caves themselves. The air flows naturally through cracks in the rock, keeping the cheese in ideal condition without a single air conditioner. In Canada, there's a maple syrup reserve, essentially a factory warehouse filled with giant barrels of pure maple syrup. The quantity is so massive that when thieves broke in during the famous Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist of 2012, they stole more than 3,000 tons of syrup worth over $18 million. It's protected now almost like gold. In the Philippines, there's a coconut processing factory where workers climb trees to collect coconuts as part of the production line. The harvested coconuts are then moved through machinery that turns them into everything from cooking oil to biodegradable cleaning products. Some employees specialize in husking coconuts so fast that they can process over 1,000 in a single shift. In Italy, there's a pasta factory where the drying rooms are designed to mimic the weather of Naples in the spring because pasta dried too quickly or in the wrong humidity changes its taste and texture. The air temperature and moisture levels are computer controlled so that every batch tastes like it was made in the same perfect climate. In South Korea, there's a theme park-like instant noodle factory where visitors can walk along a glass corridor and watch noodles being made from Dota packaging and then design their own cup of ramen on the spot. It's part factory, part tourist attraction, and it runs non-stop to meet massive demand. In Belgium, there's a beer brewery that uses a 3.2-kilometer underground pipeline to transport beer from the brewing site to the bottling facility in another part of the city. The reason? To avoid clogging the historic streets with beer trucks. The pipeline carries about 4,000 liters of beer per hour. And then there's one that feels straight out of a movie. In the United States, there's a candy factory where the chocolate is moved through the building via waterfalls. Liquid chocolate flows down steel slides into vats where it's tempered and flavored. The system isn't just for show, the cascading motion actually helps mix and cool the chocolate naturally. In Antarctica, there's a small power plant at the McMurdo Station research base that keeps the entire settlement alive in temperatures that can drop below -60°C. It burns special fuel designed to stay liquid in sub-zero conditions, and every pipe is wrapped in heating cables to prevent freezing. Without it, the station would lose power in minutes and become uninhabitable. In the middle of the North Sea, there's an offshore oil platform so large it's essentially a floating factory. It extracts, processes, and stores crude oil while housing hundreds of workers, complete with gyms, kitchens, and medical clinics. Storm waves can slam into its base with the force of a freight train, but the structure is anchored deep into the seabed to withstand it. In the Pacific Ocean, there's a fish processing factory ship that never docks for months at a time. It catches, cleans, freezes, and packages seafood entirely at sea. The only visitors are supply boats and helicopters bringing fuel, food, and new crew members. Everything from laundry to surgery can happen on board. It's a self-contained city floating in international waters. In the Chilean Andes, there's a copper mine processing facility so high up, over 4,000 meters above sea level, that workers must undergo medical checks before starting their shifts. The air is so thin that even walking between buildings can leave you gasping for breath. In Iceland, a geothermal power plant sits on the edge of an active volcanic zone, drawing energy directly from underground magma-heated water. The steam is so hot and pure that it can spin turbines without the usual treatment that most geothermal plants require. The nearby ground is warm enough that snow melts instantly, even in winter. In Siberia, there's a diamond mining facility built in a region where the ground is permanently frozen, permafrost. If the heat from machinery were to melt too much of the soil, buildings could sink or collapse, so engineers designed the foundations on stilts to keep them away from heat. And then there's a bizarre one in Alaska. There's a fish cannery that only operates for a few weeks each year, during the height of salmon season. In that short time, it processes millions of fish using massive conveyor systems, flash freezing them for shipment around the world. For the rest of the year, the entire factory stands empty in the cold, like an industrial ghost town. Alright, let's close this journey with the giants, the factories and power plants so massive they redefine what big means. The Boeing Everett factory in Washington state is the largest building in the world by volume, covering more than 13 million cubic meters. Inside, you could fit Disneyland and still have space left over. Aircraft assembly lines stretch longer than some city streets, and the roof is so vast it needs its own weather monitoring to prevent condensation clouds from forming inside. In South Korea, the Hyundai Ulsan plant is the world's largest car manufacturing complex. It's so huge that it has its own fire station, hospital, port, and road network. Over 30,000 employees work there, producing more than 1 million vehicles a year. Some workers commute within the complex using company buses because walking from one end to the other could take over half an hour. In China, the Giga Shanghai factory for Tesla was built in record time, just 168 working days from start to finish. The facility now produces hundreds of thousands of electric cars per year, and its footprint is so large that satellites regularly capture its growth from space. In Saudi Arabia, the Ras Al Khair industrial complex is one of the biggest desalination plants in the world. It can convert over 1 billion liters of seawater into drinking water every single day, enough to supply millions of people. The pipelines connected to it stretch for hundreds of kilometers inland, delivering life to cities in the desert. And finally, there's the Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear power plant in Japan, the largest nuclear power station in the world. At full capacity, it could power 16 million homes. Its sheer size and complexity are staggering, with miles of underground cables, massive cooling towers, and strict security that rivals military bases. The truth is, the world of factories and power plants is not just about machines and smoke, it's about human ambition, engineering on a scale that almost defies imagination, and solutions so inventive they seem unreal until you see them. These places are the hidden engines of civilization, and whether they sit in a frozen wasteland, float in the middle of the ocean, or hum quietly in the heart of a city, they shape the world we live in every single day.